Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is always to take the most complicated, fascinating, and sometimes outright bizarre source material, give it a thorough scrub, and make you instantly well-informed.
And today, we are definitely leaning into the fascinating and bizarre.
We really are. We're strapping on our conceptual headphones for a deep dive that involves meditation, quantum mechanics, the afterlife, and, well, arguably the strangest declassified government document we have ever encountered.
That's right. Our stack of sources today is a truly unique mix. We're looking at declassified intelligence assessments, detailed reports on consciousness exploration, some clinical study results, and extensive personal accounts.
And they all orbit the work of one man, Robert A. Monroe, and his unique audio technology, Hemi-Sync.
Right. The whole thing is centered around the Monroe Institute, or TMI, and its flagship methodology, the Gateway Experience.
Before we even touch upon frequencies or brainwaves, let's just set the mission parameters here. What exactly was the goal of the Gateway Experience? And maybe more importantly, why on earth did the U.S. Army and the CIA dedicate resources to analyzing it?
Well, the core philosophy is rooted in an affirmation from the founder, Robert Monroe himself. And that is, you are more than your physical body.
Okay, so a pretty bold starting point.
A very bold starting point. Monroe began his research way back in 1958, and it actually evolved from efforts in accelerated learning. He was trying to use environmental changes for that.
And the institute itself, that came later.
Much later. It crystallized in 1971, and its stated aim is to expand self-awareness to such a degree that the participant can explore, and this is the key, escape the restrictions of time and space.
That ambition is staggering. And that, of course, brings us to the centerpiece of our source material.
The big one.
The 1983 U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command report titled Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. This is a 29-page assessment written by LTC Wayne M. McDonnell.
And it caused a huge sensation when it was declassified in 2003. I mean, it's seen a massive resurgence in public interest recently, hasn't it?
It really has. People are rediscovering it.
It's an absolutely fascinating read, but you have to be warned. It is wordy, it's dense, and it's internally very complex.
And as our sources note, it kind of wavers intensely between attempts at hard science, citing established physicists, and what a lot of people would just categorize as deep pseudoscience or metaphysics.
Yeah, it straddles that line constantly.
Yeah.
But the assessment was created with a very clear objective: to analyze the gateway experience for potential operational use.
So things like finding a cognitive edge for Cold War defense.
Exactly, or potential espionage applications, or maybe just something as simple as improving the resilience and reducing stress among military personnel.
So the goal was always utilitarian. Can we distill the report's definition of the gateway experience? What is this training designed to achieve exactly?
It's defined as a rigorous training system. And it's designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and most critically, coherence to the brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres.
So it's not just about maximizing your brain power, it's about getting both halves to fire in perfect unison.
That's it. And the ultimate stated goal is to use this coherence to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere entirely.
To what end?
To access various levels of intuitive knowledge that are supposedly offered by what they call the universal energy matrix.
Wow. Okay. That immediately ties the physiological practice, the brain syncing, to this incredibly lofty, almost transcendental ambition of leaving the physical body. That's a huge leap.
It is. And what's interesting is the physical setting for this transformation is actually quite grounding. The Monroe Institute is located in the serene foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia.
Right. So when participants sign up for these programs like the Foundational Gateway Voyage, what does that actually look like?
Well, they undergo these week-long residential retreats. They spend hours in individual-controlled holistic environmental chambers, or CHEC units.
CHEC units, what are those?
They're essentially just private, curtained-off spaces where you recline and listen to the audio technology attempting to achieve these deep states.
Okay, let's unpack that technology now. The patented audio process that underpins the entire gateway method. It's called Hemi-Sync.
Right, which is short for hemispheric synchronization.
And the core idea is pretty simple, right? If you can get the two halves of your brain working in perfect tandem, you unlock optimal conditions for altered consciousness.
And that's achieved through something called binaural beats. This is where we get into the pure technical mechanics of it.
So this requires stereo headphones. You can't just play it on a speaker.
No, you absolutely need headphones because you have to feed two slightly different pure tone frequencies, one into each ear.
Give us the classic example that's always used.
Okay, so say you play a 300 hertz tone into your left ear, and at the exact same time, you play a 310 hertz tone into your right ear.
So your ears are getting two totally separate, distinct sounds.
Simultaneously, yes. Now, your auditory system processes these separate frequencies in this fascinating spot in the brainstem called the superior olivary complex.
You don't need to memorize that term, I assume.
No, but just think of it as the neural referee for sound. It figures out timing and location. And this complex forces the brain's two hemispheres to cooperate, to try and reconcile the difference between those incoming frequencies.
Okay, so the brain is trying to make sense of this discrepancy.
Exactly. And as a result, the listener's brain neurologically perceives a third pulsing tone.
And that perceived tone is the difference between the two.
The exact mathematical difference. So in our example, it would be a 10 hertz beat.
So wait, the 10 hertz pulse isn't actually encoded in the sound wave itself?
Not at all.
It's a psychoacoustic illusion, an electrical signal generated entirely inside your head by your own brain trying to make sense of the conflicting data.
Precisely. And that's the key. The mere perception of that binaural beat confirms that the audio processing centers in both of your hemispheres are actively functioning coherently. They're in sync.
So Hemi-Sync, as TMI defines it, is a sustained state where the EEG patterns, the electrical output of the brain of both hemispheres, are simultaneously equal in amplitude and frequency.
Which is extremely rare. In normal waking consciousness, that kind of coherence almost never happens. But Monroe's audio techniques can induce it and sustain it, even with the very basic Focus 3 tapes.
And here's where the claims really start to accelerate. The core principle isn't just about hearing a new beat, it's about why that beat alters your state of awareness.
This is the frequency following response, or FFR.
And this is a real thing, right? This is an observed phenomenon.
It is. The FFR is a scientifically observed phenomenon, the brain's inherent tendency to change its dominant electrical frequency towards the frequency of a strong external stimulus.
So in this case, the stimulus is the binaural beat.
Right. If the beat is, say, 7 hertz, the brain's electrical activity, its neural oscillations, or what we call brain waves,
Delta, theta, alpha, beta.
all of those, they will shift and stabilize near that 7 hertz rate. This process is known as entrainment.
And those sources note observable changes when this happens. I see mentions that Hemi-Sync encourages the focusing of brain energy into a narrower frequency band,
which is often called one-pointedness in yoga and meditation traditions.
And at the same time, there's a gradual increase in the brainwave's overall size and power.
Meaning the brain is becoming more coherent and stronger in its output. It's not just focused, it's more powerful.
Now, this brings us to the most abstract scientific justification in the report.
The Bentov model.
The highly specific biomedical model proposed by Itzhak Bentov, which the CIA analyst used to bridge the gap between sound and radical consciousness expansion.
Right. Bentov suggests that when the body enters deep relaxation, the human heart doesn't just beat. It produces a coherent, synchronized resonance.
So you have to think of the heart not just as a pump, but as a giant, finely tuned drum.
Exactly. And Bentov posited that this resonance is transmitted upward, stimulating the fluid-filled ventricles in the brain.
And the pressure from that generates a pulse.
An electromagnetic pulse, yes. And that pulse stimulates brain activity, increasing both its amplitude and frequency. It's an endogenous process, your body generating its own internal synchronization tool.
And here's where the theory gets, well, global. Bentov goes even further.
He does. He suggests this deeply relaxed body acts as a tuned vibrational system, transferring this highly specific energy in the 6.8 to 7.5 hertz range directly into the Earth's ionospheric cavity.
Which is significant because the Earth itself resonates at approximately 7 to 7.5 hertz.
That's the Schumann resonance.
So Bentov's theory is suggesting that achieving deep relaxation and coherence through Hemi-Sync allows the human body to literally resonate in phase with the planet's own natural electromagnetic frequency.
If you connect this to the practical application for the gateway process, it's the ultimate energy transfer mechanism. It's the bridge that allows them to claim sound, can facilitate this profound physiological change and connection to something vast and universal.
It links the body, the brain, and the planet
into one singular vibrating system.
That is an incredibly powerful claim. It justifies the massive leap in ambition. But we have to ask the critical question: how does this sit with the wider scientific community?
Well, it raises a huge debate. While binaural beat technology has certainly generated a large multi-million-dollar industry, the current scientific evidence for its benefits on cognition and mood is, frankly, Modest.
Modest.
Researchers suggest there are effects on attention, memory, anxiety, sleep, and pain perception, but they are consistently described as modest effects.
So the effects are measured,
Okay?
but the grand universal mechanisms like resonating with the Schumann resonance to achieve astral travel, that's not exactly accepted.
Not universally, no. The exact brain mechanisms and how they translate into large psychophysiological changes like true hemispheric synchronization are not well defined yet.
So what do skeptics say?
Skeptics argue that the effects people report might simply be due to placebo or powerful autosuggestion, or even just known altered brain states like dissociation or sleep paralysis, which can be induced by any strong external stimulation.
Right. I see the skeptical viewpoint here. They point to studies where stimulating the temporoparietal junction, the area responsible for your sense of self-location, can induce vivid sensations of leaving the body.
Without any metaphysical mechanism needed at all.
So that's the crux of the debate. It's finding a small, working engine, the modest effects of entrainment, and then building a starship around it.
That's a great way to put it. And for the gateway process to justify itself to the U.S. Army, it had to demonstrate that the Starship was real. And that meant the 1983 report had to, well, basically rewrite reality itself.
That is the perfect transition. We started with binaural beats, a simple auditory illusion. Now, to justify why the CIA and Army cared, why they thought this could be a strategic asset, the report had to go full science fiction.
It had to build a philosophical bridge from a headphone trick to astral projection.
Let's look at that Starship blueprint now, because this is where they stop talking about frequencies and start talking about existence itself.
To explain how a person's consciousness can move outside the restrictions of time and space, the report delves into the fundamental nature of existence. They start by asserting that the conventional definitions of matter and energy are misleading.
Right, that they imply two distinct states, and the assertion is radical. Solid matter, in the strict construction of the term, simply does not exist.
That's the foundation for everything that follows. Everything, atomic structure, the human body, the brain, consciousness itself, the entire universe, is described as nothing more than extraordinarily complex systems of energy fields,
So states of matter are just variances in the state of energy.
differentiated only by their frequency and speed of vibration.
They even provide specific, staggering numbers to illustrate this point. The nucleus of an atom vibrates at an incomprehensible 10 to the 22nd hertz.
A molecule is at 10 to the 9th hertz.
An alive human cell, only around 10 to the 3rd hertz.
What's important here is just this sheer scale. It's not just a big difference. It means that fundamentally, existence is built on movement and vibration, not permanence. We're all oscillating energy grids.
And if you accept that premise, then altering the state of consciousness becomes less mysterious.
It's just tuning the frequency of the human energy grid.
This energy framework leads directly to the concept of the holographic universe, pulling on the work of physicists like David Bohm and neuroscientists like Carl Prubram.
The report explains that energy creates, stores, and retrieves, meaning by expanding at certain frequencies in a three-dimensional mode, creating a hologram.
Let's use the analogy of the pebbles in water, but let's expand on it. So imagine dropping 3 pebbles into a perfectly still pond, creating ripples.
Right. Now, if you could instantaneously flash freeze those intersecting ripple patterns, you'd have a complex two-dimensional surface.
But if you expose that frozen pattern, the hologram, to a coherent light source, like a laser,
The resulting light diffraction recreates the entire scene in 3 dimensions. It shows you exactly where those 3 pebbles were. The image of the pebbles isn't on the surface, it's encoded in the pattern of the ripples.
and the most profound insight of holography, which they apply here, is that the part encodes the whole.
That's the critical piece. If you were to smash that frozen ripple pattern, that hologram, into 1,000 tiny pieces, theoretically, each individual piece could still recreate the entire holographic image.
Though it would be fuzzier, less detailed.
Sure. But applied to consciousness, this suggests that the individual human mind, being a fragment of this universal energy matrix, can potentially perceive the whole universal hologram.
Wait a minute. So if my consciousness is just a piece of the universal hologram, a fragment of data, does my individual personality matter? Does our unique sense of self, our ego, survive this realization?
That's where the philosophical leap is made. The report says that the mind, which it defines as the organizing and sustaining principle that guides energy and motion, interprets this holographic input. The universal hologram itself is the finite embodiment in active energy form of the infinite consciousness of the absolute.
So the absolute is the ultimate resting energy, like the still depths of the ocean.
Exactly. And the universal hologram is that ocean in motion, expressed as active energy, and we are the ripples on that surface.
And the mind interprets this data using the two hemispheres working in coherence.
Right. The nonverbal holistic right hemisphere acts as the primary receptor for the vast, complex 3D holographic data.
And the left hemisphere, the logical one.
The left hemisphere, which is binary and computer-like, works in the phase with the right to screen and reduce that massive flow of information down to a discrete, manageable, two-dimensional form. This reductionist process is what we call thinking perceiving by comparison.
So when the gateway process refines the mind's energy matrix and achieves Hemi-Sync, it's not just increasing efficiency, it's allowing the mind to access portions of the universal hologram that the left hemisphere's filtering system usually blocks.
That's the core assertion. Consciousness is seen as separate from and superior to the physical body. It's defined as the organizing principle, and when we leave the body in an OBE, it's not the brain failing, it's the consciousness detaching.
And what happens when this consciousness, this eternal spark, detaches? What is the destiny of that eternal spark of consciousness and memory?
The report views the out-of-body experience, or OBE, as a projection of this eternal spark of consciousness and memory that constitutes our ultimate source of identity. Because consciousness exists outside of physical reality and beyond time-space, it has neither a beginning nor an end.
And after death.
When the energy returns to a state of total rest, when the physical body dies, the associated consciousness merges with the universal continuum, but critically retains its accumulated memory and separate identity.
It remembers.
It remembers. It retains the power to perceive, but loses the power of will or choice until it differentiates again into another form.
So the OBE is viewed not just as some trippy experience, but as an extremely effective way of accelerating consciousness enhancement.
That's the strategic conclusion from the military's perspective. By projecting consciousness outside the body, it's immediately starting from a base much higher up. It can bypass the limitations of the physical body and brain and immediately begin entraining its frequency with a new, higher energy environment.
So the gateway process is essentially teaching participants how to consciously execute this detachment and operate in these higher frequency realms.
That's the idea.
That makes the stakes very high. Now that we understand the lofty goal and the highly speculative physics that supposedly underpin it, let's look at the actual training process, the focus states and the tools used to manipulate this expanded awareness.
The gateway method uses the Hemi-Sync tapes to systematically guide the participant through a series of progressively higher energy states and expanded awareness. The system emphasizes that the progression speed is highly individual.
It depends on the person, right?
Heavily on their nervous system sensitivity and any prior experience with focused states, like transcendental meditation.
One of the earliest physical techniques a participant learns is called resonate tuning.
Right, and this involves humming a protracted, monotonous single tone along with the Hemi-Sync tape. The goal is to encourage a powerful mind and body resonance, setting up a physical vibration, particularly in the head cavity.
Why? What's the point of the vibration?
The CIA report notes that this was a specific means sought to maintain the quality of consciousness, or CS, as the physiological system transitioned into a sleep-like state. You are deliberately stabilizing the physical system through vibration, just as the mind is trying to detach.
And they pair this with a constant mental anchor, the gateway affirmation.
Yes, this is the mental programming component. Repeating the statement that the individual is more than merely a physical body and deeply desires to expand consciousness.
And that cues the right hemisphere.
It's meant to non-verbally cue the right hemisphere that it is safe to transcend the left brain's restrictive filtering.
Okay, so the first major milestone, the foundational state that's essential to master, is Focus 10.
Focus 10 is the mind-awake body asleep state. It's achieved through specific signal stimulation in the audio tracks.
It sounds simple, just a relaxed body and an alert mind, but I imagine it's harder than it sounds.
The challenge is actively maintaining alertness while the body naturally tries to sink into sleep. It requires the participant to master that precise boundary, the edge of falling asleep without falling in.
And what are the practical physiological benefits noted for mastering Focus 10?
Clinical reports indicate that Focus 10 is extremely effective for generalized stress reduction and for relaxing involuntary muscles.
Involuntary muscles.
Yes, The source material specifically notes its ability to relax muscles like those of the bladder, a very practical benefit for people struggling with certain medical conditions or stress.
Once Focus 10 is mastered, the participant moves to Focus 12.
Focus 12 is defined as expanded awareness. This is the first stage where they move beyond physical relaxation into true exploration.
How is it achieved?
It is achieved with conscious effort and the addition of specific sound compositions, they call it pink and white noise, within the Hemi-Sync stream. Focus 12 is the state that allows the participant to begin interacting with dimensions that exist beyond immediate physical reality.
And once that baseline is established, the training moves into specific mental tools, right?
Yes, tools designed to manipulate this expanded awareness for self-discovery.
These tools feel highly symbolic, almost archetypal. Let's start with the energy bar tool.
The energy bar tool is a visualization exercise. It's used to channel universal force. The participant envisages a small, intensely pulsating dot of light, charges it with energy, and then mentally extrudes it into a sparkling, vibrating cylinder or bar.
And this cylinder is then used to channel force from the universe.
From the absolute's energy field, yes. And they direct it to selected body parts for healing and revitalization. The symbolism is potent. These kinds of shining, charged staffs or scepters appear across global folklore as tools of power or healing.
The theory underlying this must be that holographic energy matrix we discussed earlier.
Absolutely. The idea is that in the expanded state of Focus 12, the participant is directly interfacing with the universal energy pool and can manually guide that energy into their own system, which is also just an energy system, thereby restoring balance or promoting localized healing.
And the energy bar is immediately adapted for other exercises, like remote viewing.
That's right. For remote viewing, the energy bar is conceptually transformed into a whirling vortex or a portal.
A portal.
The participant is instructed to send their imagination, that eternal spark, through this portal in search of illuminating insights about distant people, places, or events. The vortex symbolism acts as a nonverbal cue to the subconscious and the holistic right hemisphere.
It basically gives the instruction to look outside.
Exactly. And for internal focused healing, they rely on the living body map.
So another visualization tool.
It's an advanced application of the energy bar tool for systemic healing. The participant first imagines their body's configuration, a detailed internal map. Then, they visualize major systems, the nervous system, the circulatory system, the skeletal structure, each in its own appropriate color.
And then the colored energy streams are applied from the energy bar.
Correct. Streams of colored energy are visualized flowing out of the tool and into the organ systems. This is based on the assumption that because the human body is composed of energy, it can be vitalized and healed through the application of more energy.
Provided that the energy is in the appropriate form, meaning the correct light or color wavelength.
Precisely. We see specific colors referenced in the sources for distinct effects. Green for balance and calm, red for stimulating vitality, purple or violet for spirituality and higher cognition.
So participants are essentially performing self-directed chromotherapy in an expanded state of awareness.
That's a good way to describe it.
And beyond these detailed visualizations, the program moves into transcending linear time altogether.
Yes, the higher focus states are dedicated to moving outside time-space boundaries. Focus 15 involves movement outside the boundaries of time-space, related specifically to discovering the past.
So like psychic archaeology.
You could think of it that way, yeah. Moving your consciousness backward along the time dimension.
And the peak state mentioned in the training documents.
That would be focus coming one, the future.
Yeah.
This is the most advanced state, involving movement outside time-space with attention on discovering the future.
And the documents make it clear this is not easily accessible.
No, it requires long, disciplined practice, often for many months, if not years, using either Hemi-Sync or deep meditation. It requires the energy field of your consciousness to maintain extreme coherence and focus in the face of the vastness of the universal hologram.
It sounds like a spiritual marathon. But the source material backs up these ambitious claims with evidence, ranging from clinical reports of physical healing to research programs that record OBEs. Let's look at the spectrum of results they've accumulated.
If we look first at the documented physiological and mental benefits, the results are certainly impressive in controlled settings. Regarding common issues like sleep and insomnia, the FFR technologies is used to essentially program sleep cycles.
How effective was it?
In one test involving severe insomniacs, 40 out of 45 participants reported that the Hemi-Sync system was at least as effective as their existing medication.
That's a high success rate.
It is. And what's more compelling is that some reported an entrainment factor that lasted up to 6 months after they stopped using the tapes.
Suggesting the brain learned to self-regulate those frequencies on its own.
That's the implication.
We also have powerful anecdotal evidence related to healing and pain management from TMI's clinical research associates. These are often the most moving examples.
Indeed. One case study involved a middle-aged woman suffering from severe fracture pain. She managed to significantly reduce her need for pain medication, attributing the change to the psychological gains and deep relaxation achieved by using the tapes.
And it was noted she looked much younger afterward and gained considerable control over her pain experience.
But the truly profound example relates to end-of-life care.
The case of the dying man with intractable pain.
Yes. He was suffering from severe, constant pain that massive doses of narcotics could no longer control. Using the Hemi-Sync tapes, he achieved full pain control and peace during his last week of life.
And the clinical notes credit this not necessarily to a direct physiological intervention, right?
Correct. They credit it to the tapes making him less frightened, allowing him to achieve mental clarity and make peace with his family and his impending death. Focus 10, the mind-awake body asleep state, plays a crucial role here, specifically in reducing stress, which chemically counteracts the pain response.
Beyond individual anecdotes, there was a specific structured study involving addiction treatment that compared therapy alone versus therapy augmented by this auditory guidance. This is crucial because it gives us a direct comparison.
This was a small, focused study on Native Alaskan and American males with chronic alcohol dependence. They were divided into two groups. The control group, or CG, received standard cognitive therapy.
And the experimental group.
The EG group received the exact same therapy, but it was augmented by Hemi-Sync.
So what were the measurable outcomes?
The results were striking when measured using the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the MMPI-2, which is a standardized psychological test. The Hemi-Sync group, the EG group, showed significantly reduced scores on 4 key clinical scales:
Which were?
depression, hysteria, paranoia, and psychasthenia.
And why are those specific 4 scales so important in this context?
Well, they're highly relevant to the underlying psychological distress in substance abuse. Depression and anxiety are often triggers for drinking. Hysteria relates to emotional excitability, and paranoia and psychasthenia often point to deep-seated anxiety and obsessive tendencies.
So the fact that auditory guidance reduced distress in these specific areas suggests that Hemi-Sync wasn't just superficially distracting them.
It suggests it was helping to address the underlying psychological patterns fueling the addiction more effectively than therapy alone.
And the long-term outlook was also impacted.
Crucially, yes. While the follow-up data was limited, it suggested the Hemi-Sync group had a higher projected 1-year total abstinence rate, 35%, compared to only 23% in the therapy alone group.
So even a small-scale study strongly indicates that augmenting standard psychological treatment with this coherent auditory guidance may lead to better long-term outcomes.
It's a significant indicator, yes.
Shifting to cognitive function, the source material suggests enhanced learning and creativity are also applications of these states, linking directly back to Monroe's original accelerated learning research.
Monroe's early research found that by combining focus 10 mind awake, body asleep, with a second, specific, sometimes nerve-wracking signal, they could produce an extremely clear form of mentation, of hyper-focused thought.
And this state was deliberately used in creative stimulus exercises.
It was. And they got measurable creative output.
What kind of results?
Well, engineers developed patentable designs, and participants quickly became proficient commercial artists or authors. The anecdotal evidence is that one participant was inspired to write an entire book, completed it, and sold it to a publisher within 6 weeks.
Wow. And beyond the creative arts, they used it in sports.
Mental physical coordination activities with guided imagery, yes. They applied the techniques to 6 different golfers, who collectively reduced their scores by as much as 5 strokes.
So the focus state allowed them to refine motor memory and visualization to a higher degree?
A higher degree than they could achieve consciously.
These results are impressive, but they are all still grounded in the physical world. The Institute continues to run research programs specifically to validate the more transcendental claims, merging EEG science with attempts at astral travel.
This brings us to the Discovery residential programs. Participants used Hemi-Sync, or later SAM sounds, while simultaneously undergoing real-time EEG recording.
So they were monitoring their brain activity as they attempted remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, and lucid dreaming.
Exactly.
What were the quantitative results for the remote viewing attempts?
They achieved statistically significant success. Participants got 38 first-place target matches in 110 attempts.
And when you run the probability on that.
The chance of achieving that by random guessing alone is 0.0066. It suggests something beyond chance was at play, even for untrained participants.
And was there a correlation between the brainwaves and the successes?
There are strong indications. One participant consistently failed his RV attempts until his EEG monitoring showed his brain activity evolve into one of the desired mind mirror patterns, specifically the inclusion of the gamma effect.
And that's a high-frequency state, often measured in advanced meditators.
It is. And in his remaining 3 sessions, once this pattern was established, he scored a first-place hit and a tied for second-place hit.
So that suggests the brain pattern actually enables the success.
Yes. They also captured spectacular successes, including one participant who produced an accurate drawing of an OBE target from 2 different angles.
Which would be impossible if they were only relying on standard sensory information.
Right. And the highlight of this long-term EEG program was capturing what they call the flatline phenomenon.
This is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence supporting the idea that consciousness is not really produced by the brain.
I think so. During one participant's expansive mystical state experience, the EEG recording showed a brief but significant reduction in cerebral cortex brain activity. It was almost a flat line.
If the brain flatlines, standard science says the person should be unconscious or essentially brain dead.
Exactly. Yet the participant's conscious report of the experience during that flatline moment was profound, highly detailed, and deeply expansive.
What's the hypothesis there?
Researchers hypothesize that this may indicate the brain getting out of the way, the physical filter shutting down, allowing a larger, universal consciousness to prevail and be experienced. It strongly supports the brain as filter theory.
Speaking of profound experiences, let's explore what TMI calls otherware, the non-physical realms accessed during these deep altered states. We have a detailed anecdote about an explorer using the personalized PRE program.
This specific exploration was conducted in an incredibly controlled environment, a sound and light-proof booth lined on the outside with copper sheets and oriented toward magnetic north.
So it was designed to maximize sensory deprivation and coherence.
And combined with Hemi-Sync, this setup allowed for a unique state of split consciousness, where the explorer could report back on their findings without disrupting the depth of the altered state.
So a conscious reporter navigating an altered dimension. What was the journey?
The experience began with the explorer traveling through a dark, confined space they called a cave. The explorer later interpreted this cave as an insane asylum for existentialists, or private hells created by people who died having repressed emotions like anger, guilt, shame, or fear.
And the core principle revealed here is that in this after-death zone, thought creates experience.
If you believe you deserve hell, you create it, much like a hyper-vivid lucid dream, where the physics is entirely subjective.
A self-created reality based on unresolved emotional energy. And after emerging from this troubling zone,
the explorer emerged into a region of overwhelming brilliance, peace, and unconditional love, which they labeled the after-death zone, corresponding to what most religions call heaven or paradise.
And they encountered beings of light.
Condensations of awareness, yes. And they communicated profound insights.
What was the key takeaway from these beings?
The beings explained that the intense sun-heart light source the explorer perceived was the God of humanity, representing the highest realization toward which humans are evolving, the ultimate expression of compassion and universal love.
But they clarified that this entity was not the omnipotent presence you call God.
A crucial distinction. It was a highly evolved, universal energy construct, but not the absolute source of all creation. It implies hierarchies of consciousness beyond our understanding.
What's incredible is that this anecdote closely mirrors typical reports from near-death experiences, but the participant had the experience without dying.
Exactly. And this raises the profound question that the Monroe Institute actively pursues. If consciousness can access this region of light without physical death, can we find a way to train ourselves to return there consciously?
That quest for a form of death insurance led to the development of highly specific programs like Going Home, based on Robert Monroe's own OBE explorations.
He explored a recovery site he first visited in 1965. The Going Home system is specifically designed to help those with life-threatening illnesses or severe trauma to significantly reduce the universal fear of physical death. It teaches individuals how to navigate to Focus 27.
Which TMI has labeled the park, What is Focus 27?
Monroe discovered Focus 27 to be a construct, a stable, non-physical location started by human minds long ago. It serves as a temporary recovery site specifically for those distraught or confused by the trauma of death.
So the newly deceased often suffer post-mortem bewilderment, not realizing they are no longer physical.
Right. And the program trains the physically alive to retrieve these bewildered entities and escort them to Focus 27 for rest and recuperation before they are ready to choose their next life sojourn.
That is an astonishing application of this technology, using a state of expanded awareness to become a sort of post-mortem counselor.
The source material indicates that the Lifeline program, which Going Home is based on, tracked over 1,300 actual individual trips to Focus 27 by physically alive people during its early years, all dedicated to this retrieval and guidance process.
It's a seamless transition from clinical pain reduction to literally preparing for and navigating the afterlife.
That's an astounding claim.
It is. So what does this entire journey from the CIA analysis to the binaural beats to the OBE retrieval programs, what does it all tell us about our place in the universe?
If we synthesize all these findings, the entire exploration emphasizes one singular, unifying concept, that we are all one.
That we are individual, differentiated facets of a greater source, which you might call God, the absolute, or universal energy.
And that this connection is not aspirational. It is innate and incredibly powerful, woven into our vibrational frequency.
And the philosophy is that self-knowledge leads to self-love, which then naturally radiates outward.
Precisely. That love and understanding spontaneously spreads to sympathy, empathy, and love of others globally. It's a fundamental principle confirmed by external research, too.
You mean studies on those who have experienced spontaneous OBEs or near-death experiences?
Like those conducted at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies? Yes. They consistently note that a massive after effect is increased empathy towards others, driven by a deeper understanding of interpersonal relationships and a significant decrease in the fear of death.
And the gateway training explicitly incorporates ancient practices to enhance this self-knowledge, demonstrating the link between ancient wisdom and neurological function.
Absolutely. Take the Om chant, which is used at the start of gateway recordings as an anchor for relaxation and connection.
That primordial sound of creation isn't just a spiritual tradition, right? It has a direct, demonstrable physiological effect.
It does. The rhythmic pronunciation and vibration of the Om sound stimulate the vagus nerve.
And the vagus nerve is critically important, isn't it?
It is. It's the longest cranial nerve, originating in the medulla oblongata, the brainstem's most vital part.
Yeah.
Its stimulation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest system, which induces deep relaxation, reduces generalized stress, and dramatically decreases activity in the amygdala.
The brain area directly associated with fear and stress responses.
So the Om chant is a perfect bridge, uniting spiritual beliefs with measurable neurological calmness.
And similarly, the color visualization techniques used in the Energy Bar tool and the Living Body Map are leveraging specific neurological responses.
They're moving beyond mere symbolism. They rely on the intentional visualization of specific color wavelengths. Even with closed eyes, intentional color visualization activates corresponding brain areas and creates physiological effects.
For example, visualizing green is associated with immediate balance and calm and can lead to lower measured blood pressure.
And visualizing red is a powerful stimulus, used to enhance circulation and foster vitality.
And the higher, more spiritual colors.
Purple or violet is associated with spirituality and higher cognition. Intentionally visualizing these colors can stimulate the brain's endogenous pain-relieving mechanisms, the body's natural opioid production, provoking a non-chemical form of pain relief.
So the training system treats light and color as specific frequencies of energy that can be consciously directed to repair and enhance the body's own energy field.
Exactly.
Looking at this comprehensively, the Gateway Voyage is summarized in our sources as being nothing less than a basic user's manual for what a human experience is all about.
It forces a paradigm shift. It speaks to the idea that we have an innate endogenous capacity, a natural, even magical ability to elevate our vibration and expand consciousness.
And the fact that DMT, a potent psychedelic, is naturally produced within the body is cited as biological evidence that the tools for transcendence are internal and inherent.
Right. Most people only use a small percentage of these abilities, but the path to the next progressive step in human evolution lies in increased awareness and this profound shift in perspective.
And the final hope of consciousness researchers is to take these often dismissed, sometimes pathologized extraordinary experiences, OBEs, lucid dreaming, communication with the deceased, and normalize them.
The ultimate goal is to depathologize them, allowing people to realize that these experiences are far more common than admitted and should be talked about openly.
And thereby challenge the rigid, physicalist paradigm that dictates the mind is only produced by the brain.
Exactly. A change in that fundamental paradigm is needed to accommodate the wide spectrum of evidence we're seeing.
It seems like the gateway process offers not a destination, but a highly structured methodology for an open-ended journey.
That's right. Robert Monroe's powerful directive to his explorers was straightforward. Go out and explore and tell us what you find. The entire program is wrapped up in answering the fundamental questions of human existence. Who am I? Where was I before this body? What is my purpose?
And perhaps most relevant to you, our listener, at this exact moment. If consciousness is truly eternal, not dependent on the physical body, and is continuously accumulating memory, what is the most important message you could receive and understand at this exact point in your existence? The sources suggest the answer may not come in words or declarative statements, but as a feeling, a knowing, or a series of sensory impressions collected as fragments of an overall evolving puzzle.